Okay, I'd like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, April 21, 2025 to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Gaffino.
Here.
Trustee Christensen.
Here.
Trustee Curtis. Here. Trustee Gately.
Here.
Trustee Lowry.
Here.
Trustee Nedved.
Here.
Trustee Salazar.
Here.
All right, thank you. Audience comments? Trustee comments? All right. First item on discussion, Steve.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 1 under discussion tonight is the water impact agreement that we are currently working through with Aurora PAC, and we've come to a tentative agreement. As the board is aware, this has been going on for a long time. It all started with Aurora PAC having a special use granted in March of 2020. At the time, they were estimating 10% more water usage, and it was approved by the village. When it was presented, the numbers were expected. To put in perspective, so we back up a little bit, Aurora Packing is the largest water user in our community. Their water at the time was projected to go up to 231,000 gallons a day on average and 338,000 on their highest max day, so like if they have a real big production day. After going through the process and their building permits in Fox Metro, once they started to go through the engineering of the actual site, the production numbers actually came back different, and so they were higher. So that 232,000 we were anticipating is more of an average of 347,000 a day, and the max day of 338,000 is actually now projected to be 508,000 gallons a day. To put that in perspective, our East Side water tower holds 500,000 gallons. So that would be draining an entire East Side tower in one day of production. So with that, the board, as you know, has gone back and we've actually changed our ordinances, and we now have a impact fee for all high water users. But we were already in the process of working with Aurora PAC. Their attorney, Kathleen West, is in the audience today, and she's been great to work with. We've been going back and forth trying to find a solution to negotiating a water impact fee. What's interesting is when you first look at this, impact is something, it's hard to explain, but it's easy to quantify. I mean, basically, you can only produce so much water in a day with our wells, and only so much water can go to a treatment plant. Then that treatment plant sends that water up to a tower, and there's only so much storage in a tower. So the issue is if you dedicate such a large amount of that effort, that operation, and that capital, that what you're doing is you're essentially putting other things in your system at risk. The ability to provide water, or if a couple wells break, the ability to just provide normal average day water to the rest of the town. So that's what's quantified in a formula that was done with our engineering consultants from Engineering Enterprises. And through that, they came up with a impact fee of the first year to be paid at the time of agreement of $1.5 million from Aurora PAC to the village. And then the agreement stipulates after the first year, we're going to recheck to see if the numbers, how much. So we've set a low base that we know they're going to hit the first year. That'll be the initial impact. And then the second year, we'll have a full year of data. We know where the maximum is going to be. So we can't charge them the maximum because they may actually use a little less than their maximum. So that second year will be based on the first year, and it's that number in between. Whatever that number comes up in between, that'll be the second year impact number. So going through this agreement, what we realized too is, and this is true in a lot of things we do, as being the government, sometimes when you're dealing with the private sector, you want to make sure that they understand that we're not in it to try to get taxes and fees from everybody. But essentially, when you're a private business and you're going and looking at these large impact fees, you look at that like, well, why is it so much? And then you have to go through that process to explain it and show you why it's a detriment to have that kind of impact on a community. So importantly, it's important for us to then make sure that we're not only collecting that for our residents, but also we have to understand the perspective of the private business too. So halfway through, we realized that when villages put things in agreements such as, if you go over this, we're going to shut your water off immediately. That's someone who's putting production for a day of 500,000 gallons, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, you went over 1,000 gallons today, so we're shutting your water off right now. We said, okay, I can see from their perspective that might be a little stark as well. So we tried to work in ways check marks, benchmarks, ways for us to protect ourselves, but also to assure them that we're not just going to have this agreement and now have a license to shut their water off for no reason at any time. So with that, that's where a lot of the back and forward went. And what we ended up with was coming up with some really, in-depth benchmarks that talk about monitoring their water usage over each year. And if they go over 15,000 gallons on average for a year, we can come back and readjust that impact fee. If they go over 30,000 gallons more in one day over their max day, so that would be 538,000 gallons, that's a large amount of water. And if we had something, let's say, God forbid, a fire or something going on in town where we knew that that could be a detriment to our system, we have the right to shut that water down right away. But we're also going to work with them to give them assurances that, hey, if we ever had to do something like that, which in my tenure, I think we've only had to do it once for a water main break that we had to shut them down for a day, we would make sure to put some, calls ahead of time. Hey, you know what, we have a water main break. We're going to call you. It's going to take us a few hours to throttle it down, so you have a little bit of time to, prepare for that shutdown, and we're hoping to have the shutdown down by X, so we have that communication. All that's built into this agreement. So it's not just about the impact fee, it's about protections to the village as well as providing that water to Aurora Packing. With that, I have Kevin Drendel, our attorney who drafted the water agreement, and Kathleen West here from Aurora Packing, if you would like to ask her any questions. Kevin, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just a few things. So, they're the largest water user in the village. There are a couple of other large water users, and we anticipate another one coming in. We were poised to do a study of our water system at the time that Aurora Pack came in for the special use. We didn't initially feel, we thought we were okay in terms of the timing of that until we realized that their use might be a lot bigger than what anyone anticipated. To Aurora Packing's credit, they've, we both of us have had to work through this. Obviously they were sinking a lot of money into the making their plant bigger and able to handle more production. And so, they were concerned about, putting all this money into it and then not having water to actually meet their need. And of course, we were concerned about being able to meet their need as well as the needs of the rest of the village. And we've worked through it over the last 2 to 3 years, and I think very well. We had good communication with Aurora Packing. They worked with us. We worked with them. We listened to them. They listened to us. This agreement is basically based on an analysis that was done by the engineers looking at the whole water system, and it is becoming the model for how we're going to deal with large water users going forward. We have another one coming soon after this one, so we're going to be using this model that we worked with Aurora Packing, also with the next large water user who comes in, and with any other large water users in the future, whether it's a new user or someone who ramps up their use of water over the 15,000 gallons a day, which is we put into our code. So this agreement ties into our code, the changes that we've made recently. And basically the idea behind this is that if you've got someone who's going to be increasing water significantly, we don't necessarily anticipate that. We know that we're going to add homes here and businesses there, and that over time we're going to have to provide more water. But when there's a sudden increase in water usage, we have to be able to accommodate that, and we may not necessarily have the structure in place. And so part of, basically the impact fee is based upon the analysis that takes the impact of a particular large water user on our system and calculates the cost that's specifically and uniquely attributable to that impact. And that's what we're collecting from them in the impact fee.
That's good.
So that we can, take care of their needs as well as continue to take care of the rest of the village's needs.
Kevin, I have a question.
So what, that impact fee, what are we going to be doing tangibly with it to mitigate their usage? Are we building a new water tower? Are we?
Yes.
What are we going to be doing with this?
So we were already planning to build a new water tower. We're building a bigger water tower.
That's years away
No, it's not.
from
It's-
completion.
They started
Yeah.
already.
So, Trustee Curtis, to your question, that's a good way of putting it. What is the attributable impact? So that money, and tonight when we talked about water rates, that money is already figured into the reserves. So that would help us basically plan capital projects out further, because now you have a larger money to offset bigger capital improvements that you might have. What Kevin was saying was, when we originally were looking at the water tower, we were looking at a 750,000 gallon tower. And then we said, you know what, we might need 1 million. But when Aurora Pack came in, all of a sudden, the size of that tower, at the time, we said, okay, we might need a bigger tower in the future just to accommodate their impact. So what we've done is, with our engineers, we can provide this water right now. We can provide this water while the tower is being built. It requires a little more operational finesse, from our water department to always monitor that system. And basically, so I don't want to scare anybody, that, the water system's on alarms. And so what happens is Adam's always monitoring during the day with his staff. We have alarms set up at night. If a water level drops in a tower, it kicks on a well. What you might have to do, though, is have your wells run longer, which is also part of the impact, right? Because now you're running your wells longer, which means your wear and tear on the wells is longer. Part of that fee includes the wear and tear on wells.
So what happened with the initial projections? I mean, that seems like it's quite a big difference from what they proposed to secondary projection.
Kathleen can answer that probably better than I can, but I think the initial response was that at the time, the 10% was more of what they were expecting to do in water usage, as opposed to, 10% more, and I think it was the amount of actual cattle that they were going to do.
It was initially,
Want to come up to the mic, please? State your name.
Don Zico, I'm the facilities manager at Aurora Packing. So initially, it was misrepresented as 10%. What it should have been was 10% per cattle. So we were going from, say, 450 cattle to 1,200 cattle. So that's how it got miscommunicated, and that's why that number was wrong. So that's how it happened.
My concern's always for the citizens. We're not a big city like Aurora, even Naperville. I mean, we're a small town, and I just want to make sure, like you said, should we have a fire, should we have some issue, or should we have a drought or something, that all of a sudden the residents are going to be the ones bearing the brunt of that? What insurance do we have that we're not going to be the ones to suffer on this?
So currently, right now, and Brian, you can add something, but the wells aren't running constantly 24/7 right now, and we have the ability to run 4 wells at a time. So we try to offset them so that they're not constantly running, to give them breaks. But essentially what you would do is, on those, mind you, the average day is actually not that much higher than what they're currently using. So the average day at, let's say, 330, 340, in that range, they're probably using somewhere around 300,000 gallons a day right now.
But why not do a private well? I mean, was that ever discussed?
It's much cheaper than to pay us an impact fee and for us to build. We already have the infrastructure.
I mean, even a private well, to get to a depth, I don't know, I'm not a well expert, but I know that when we built our wells, I mean, they were, years ago, they were about $2 million a well to get deep enough to have plus I know we'd have to check our ordinances, and if we even allow someone to dig a
I don't
private
think
well
we
in our
would. I don't
community.
think we're allowed to.
Yeah, we'd have to segregate their water system from our water system. Right now, obviously, it's tied together. I mean, the good news is that our engineers have studied it. They've studied our system. They've studied the future projections and the future needs. They've studied the increase that Aurora Packing is going to be, producing. And the good news is that we can accommodate them, and that with the larger water tower that we're building, that we're going to be able to accommodate them, as well as future increases. We're obviously going to have to stay on top of that. There may need to be also future capital increases as well if we grow or continue to grow. But our engineers are confident that we can handle the excess water production that they're going to have.
But importantly, the most important thing about the future is that we've been working with EEI on a study separate from this for 2 years, and they'll be presenting hopefully in the next couple of months. They just gave us their preliminary report, and that was our master water study. That looks at all the future storage needs that you might need for the community. That talks about the future water sources of the community. It talks about your current system and what upgrades or maintenance is going to need to be done over the next 20 to 30 years. When you look at that in totality, that's going to be, the master plan per se on the water system going forward. We know already that there's probably going to be a need for a fourth tower down the road one day. That's why it was important to get the third tower up when we did. So now that it's being built, it's great. The good news is it's supposed to be functionally complete by the end of next fall, correct?
Correct.
So it's
By
about
when?
a year and a half. It's a 2-year project, but it's about a year and a half to actually build the
Excellent.
structure.
I think this arrangement that you went through is excellent. I like the impact fee that helped offset our cost. I like how you, explained it. We move forward.
Anybody else?
I'm fine with it.
No, I would just like to make one comment that, we are a wonderful place to locate a business. We have a great location. But I also don't want our small village having 6 or 7 water towers in 10 years. I mean, we need to make sure that we have that, this growth in mind as well, that we're not making the aesthetics of our village unappealing.
No, I totally understand. And the one thing, just to remind the board, is that we are taking down the old tower that's empty right now where the new one's going to be built. So you'll still have effectively 3. We have 3 now. We'll have 3 when the new tower's up as soon as we take the old one down. Eventually, when we add a 4th, and I'm not saying there'll be a 5th, but there's definitely most likely a 4th in the next 10 to 20 years. When you do that, though, it's also the size. So if you don't want that many towers, effectively, if the pressure is right, you could just build bigger towers. Therefore, you'd have less towers, just bigger ones that hold more water.
All right. Thank you. Thanks. All right. Next item, route through and road diet. Steve?
Okay. Item number 2 on the agenda tonight is we shifted from water engineering to transportation engineering. As the board knows, in our comprehensive plan and in our strategic plan, we've talked about Route 31 for years. We're looking at ways to make effective improvements, and it helped with the towns to the north of us going through their road diets. We now have a tangible way to connect to them if we would like to do a road diet. And so with that, we engaged WBK Engineering, who we use for a lot of our development engineering. They are here tonight to give a small presentation. The goal was to study the area of Route 31 where, and I do want to remind you, they're going to show you this, but 31's traffic volume in North Aurora is going to be higher than the towns north of us because we're right on 88. So the most important thing of a road diet is to see the traffic levels. And so at first we were, skeptical that it would work, but we wanted to see. So WBK did a nice presentation. They did a study from Moose Heart to Airport Road. And with that, if you'd like to, I'm going to, all right, and then we're going to plug this in. And it's going to show up there. In the meantime, I can explain the picture for you. There's cars.
You don't need us, right, Steve?
I got this. Okay, there's Why is there a picture of me on here?
Knocking me out, Steve.
Close your camera and we'll show.
How are you doing?
There you go.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you for letting us give a brief presentation tonight. I'm Vince DePrimo with WBK Engineering, and I have Ryan Sykes here with me as well. We're going to quickly run through the feasibility study for Illinois Route 31 that Steve mentioned. The limits of the improvements, as Steve mentioned as well, going from Moose Heart to Airport Road. If you go to the next slide, Steve. So here's our existing area. The project limits, we have 7 major intersections through there. 4 of them are signalized with Moose Heart, Oak, State, and Airport. You can see up here, this is the limits of where we've studied. Everything primarily through here currently is a 4-lane section with 2 lanes north and southbound, except for the downtown area where it does open up to 5 lanes there between Oak and State Street. If you move on to the next slide. So this kind of gives you a high-level look. So the limits of the improvements would start about 500 feet south of Mooseheart. We would leave that intersection alone. It has full 5 lanes wide, has left turn lane and everything there. And then that would take us down to Oak. So that's that first orange section you're seeing there. And there we would be revising the limits, or the lane configuration, I should say, from 4 lanes with 2 going north and south to having just 3 lanes in total. 1 northbound lane and 1 southbound lane with a bi-directional turn lane down the center. The blue segment you see, which I mentioned, between Oak and State, with that being a major road crossing, or river crossing, excuse me, that would not be changed. We would be leaving that alone as a 5-lane section. Very similar if you've driven through Batavia. They did the work north and south of their downtown and then left that area between Wilson and Main, the 5 lanes wide. And then we would pick that road diet 3-lane section back up again, make a transition south of State, and work down to Airport Road, with Airport Road being the end of the improvement. We're looking to stop there because then we're getting into the tollway area and letting people be able to open back up to make their merges and get on and off the tollway. If you move on to the next one, I kind of touched on the project information that's up there. We're, like I said, primarily converting those 2 segments from 4 lanes to 3 lanes. Obviously, the purpose of the project, safety and capacity, and help cut down some of the lack of turning lanes and substandard lane widths. Anyone that's driven through there knows it's pretty tight. We have 9 and 10-foot wide existing lanes. So we're trying to improve traffic, improve and give left turn lanes for people to make turns. Also help for pedestrians to cross the road as well, give them an easier ability to cross the road, and then just slowing down some of the speed differentials when people are trying to slow up and speed up to not be riding side by side due to the narrow lane widths. With that, I'll turn it over to Ryan to kind of dive a little bit into some of the traffic analysis.
Yeah, so as Vince said, my name is Ryan Sykes with WBK. Kind of looking at the existing traffic along the corridor. Going to kind of be focusing on the table in the bottom right, which is kind of hard to see, but I'll do my best to describe it for you. But the annual, the ADTs, the average daily traffic volumes, are kind of broken up into 4 segments. So from Mooseheart Road to Oak Street to State Street, State Street to Airport, and then Airport to 88. So if we're just kind of looking at the segments here, Mooseheart to Oak Street is just a little over 18,000. Oak Street to State Street, that's that downtown section, just over 24,000. Just over 16,000 between State and Airport, and then back up over 24,000 south of Airport Road. So in the table that we have here, we kind of have it broken up into 3 columns. So the existing traffic counts, which I just kind of ran through, those were provided by the village to WBK. So then we take that information, we coordinate with the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, or CMAP, as you may know it. They're the local planning organization, so they provide us with growth rates. So we grow that out to 2050, and then we look at 2 scenarios: the no build, which is just the traffic grown to our design year 2050, leaving the existing geometry as is, and then also 2050 build scenario, which is obviously our road diet. Again, just to kind of reiterate, 24,000 right in the heart of the downtown. That makes a lot of sense because it's the bridge crossing across the Fox River, and also you have that traffic going to and from 88. So next slide, please.
Before you move on, how is it that changing it from 4 lanes to 3 lanes also decreases the projected amount of traffic?
So that's a good question. So what you commonly see with road diets is that a small percentage of traffic will be diverted to the nearest arterial. So in this case, that would be Randall Orchard, or if you really want to go to the east, that's Kirk Road. However, for our analysis, we used the 2050 no build as a conservative measure, which is consistent with what the Batavia and Geneva studies did as well. And you have to kind of look at this logically too. But, CMAP they base it on their model, but in terms of just where are people going, the next river crossing is Wilson up in Geneva, and then Sullivan to the south. So they're kind of committed through this corridor once you're here, either crossing the bridge or to 88. So kind of my point is it could be a little bit light on their projected traffic.
Oh, thank you.
So this is our intersection crash history. Just bottom left, just want to highlight this is over the last 5 years, 2019 to 2023. We looked at 7 intersections here: Mooseheart Road, Elm Street, Maple Avenue, Oak Street, West State Street, John Street, and Airport Road. 4 of these are signalized. So just 162 crashes over the 5-year period that we studied here. Of those, the majority of them are rear end, left turns, and then side swipes, same direction. So actually about 75% of all the crashes here are just those 3, and then the others are kind of secondary, right turns, and all the other ones, fixed objects. As you can kind of see on the map, the highest concentration is right through the downtown section, but I just want to reiterate that we're leaving it as the 5-lane section as it is as part of this road diet. Next slide. So just kind of diving into the typical sections of the roadway, as Vince said, it's pretty narrow, 9, 10-foot lanes. Anyone that's kind of driven through this corridor, it's kind of uncomfortable to drive through it, right? I live in Geneva, so I drove through the corridor on the way here, and as Vince kind of highlighted the speed differentials, I had a truck in the right lane, and I was trying to pass it, and he's hugging the inside lane, so I actually had to go kind of into opposing traffic to get around him. It presents a dangerous situation. But you look at our proposed typical section, 11-foot lanes, and a 10-foot bi-directional left turn lane, which is also consistent with the Batavia and Geneva studies as well. So that kind of leaves like 2.5 to 3 feet on the outside of it. Steve, next slide. So why a lane reallocation? Why is the village considering this? As Vince kind of said, a road diet is just converting the existing 4-lane section down to a 3-lane section. So that'd be 1 travel lane in each direction, separated by a bi-directional left turn lane. So the purpose of this, and kind of, I guess, the benefits of a road diet is that FHWA has, their studies have shown as much as a 47% reduction in crashes. Obviously, you provide a safe space for left turn movements. They can pull off, wait for a gap in traffic, then don't have to worry about being rear-ended. If you implement a road diet, it improves the roadway crossings and side street turning movements. Obviously, it's easier to cross a 3-lane intersection than a 4-lane intersection, and then just kind of bringing it home with the speed differentials. You don't have that jockeying for position just because you're uncomfortable along the corridor. I'll pass it back to Vince.
Yeah, if you go to the next slide there, Steve. So this one here is just kind of walking through some of the key engineering elements. So obviously, this is Route 31. This is a state route. So with that, we're going to have to go through their formal process. So the preliminary or phase 1 engineering, we would go through and coordinate with IDOT, FHWA coordination meetings. We would be going through and doing the full traffic capacity analysis and intersection studies, and ultimately putting together the PDR or project development report, along with public involvement. That would all go through IDOT for review and approval. And then going from there, we would go into the next step, which would be the phase 2 design engineering, which would be then once we get the preliminary engineering approved by IDOT and they've gone through all the traffic studies and the public involvement and everything's taken care of at that point, we get into actually producing the plans and the bid documents to go out to bid. And then the final phase is the phase 3, the construction, actually doing the work out in the field and completing the construction oversight of the improvements. So obviously that process is pretty rigid and pretty set in stone. That it's IDOT's process, and that's what they would be looking for as far as the next steps beyond the feasibility study we've completed here. Moving on here to our final one, we're talking a little bit about some of the funding and the budgetary costs for this. So we've gone through as part of the feasibility study and tried to provide some budgetary costs, breaking down that phase 1, phase 2 portion for IDOT at about $95,000 for those two combined. And then the phase 3 construction oversight and the construction of the project at about another $130,000. The $100,000 anticipates construction either in late fall of 2026 or early 2027, just depending on the process going through IDOT and getting all their clearances and sign-offs. Ryan's going to bring it home here with a couple of pros and cons regarding the funding and some of the options that are out there for funding for the village.
Yeah, so Vince mentioned the timeline in terms of construction. So 2026, 27 is kind of the earliest that it could be constructed, and it's based on the funding type. So the first one that we've identified is locally funded, so that's where the village, they handle everything. So the pros of this is minimal startup time, and phase 1 and phase 2 can actually run concurrently. Obviously, with this, the village is responsible for all costs for phase 1, 2, and 3. The HSIP, which is the IDOT's Highway Safety Improvement Program, it's a 90-10 funding split, and it actually covers the funding for all phases of engineering and construction. The downside of this is that they do require a QBS process, so it's qualifications-based process. So they solicit it out. They have to get at least 3 firms to submit on it. Then they put it into a scoring system that gets sent down to IDOT with their selection. And then you take the time to produce the proposal, the agreement. I guess the one caveat with that is we've had this before on other projects, but we can complete a section 1440 request, which is basically that you assume any risk, like starting the project without notice to proceed. You may not get the incurred costs back, but I guess that could speed it up a little bit. In terms of the STP, that's the Shared Transportation Fund program. That's through the Kane-Kentel Council of Mayors. 80-20 split. It does avoid the QBS process. It is funding for the phase 3 and construction only. In terms of these timelines, though, locally funded, there is no funding cycle for this. We just kind of prepare a proposal, it gets signed off, and we can get started right away. So we could start as soon as like this summer. That's what we have up there. And then what Vince mentioned, letting in fall 2026 or early 2027. Still have to go through the IDOT process to get to that point. But HSIP, the call for projects, it's actually open right now. It closes in June. Their applications will close in June. They make their selections in September. So then based on the selections, then that's when you start the QBS process to solicit the proposals, notice to proceed in spring 2026 after getting the IDOT agreement, and flash forward, basically 2 years. The letting is spring 2028 for that. STP is kind of on a similar timeline. Their call for projects is in October. They take applications through the end of December, make their selections in June of next year, notice to proceed August, letting in spring 2028. So a couple of advantages and disadvantages. Locally funded is probably the most streamlined, though.
I have a question on the construction cost, or what type of construction is that? Is that striping?
Yeah, that's the pavement marking. So that would consist of the removal of everything.
Yeah,
And then the new
100,000 to do that, huh?
Yeah. So and then to do the installation of all the
Signs, or is there?
pavement reflectors,
there's reflectors.
and the signage throughout
Yeah.
there. And then in the previous projects up the road, they did water blasting was what was required as far as the removal method of the pavement marking, which is versus grinding the pavement. So it's a cleaner version, but obviously it has a higher dollar price to it. I'm sure that was more likely than not dictated by IDOT during the review. I think for the city of Batavia, just to kind of put it in perspective, they do have a little bit longer run, but theirs, their striping and their portion, which you saw done last fall, was about $160,000.
We'll have a new road hopefully when this happens, so I'm sure grinding it wouldn't be the best if it.
Right.
You know, I have a question, maybe Steve should answer it, I don't know, but the state said they were going to be resurfacing that area between Oak and Airport Road. How is that going to be coordinated with this effort if we go ahead and proceed with it?
I don't think it's Oak, it's State and Airport.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the state's gonna go ahead and pave all of 31 along that whole stretch, so from 56 all the way out to 88 this summer, regardless of our
Oh,
project.
this summer, okay.
Oh, yeah, and
All
so
right.
like, it's unfortunate because, you know, we didn't have a lot of advance notice on the IDOT project, otherwise we would have liked to have maybe tried to time that
Yeah,
way.
Be nice they just stripe it the way we want it and we're good.
Yeah.
One thing to point out is we actually do have in the preliminary budget that's going to be voted on May 5th. And next year, we do have $95,000 in that budget for engineering for WBK to move forward with the IDOT permitting process, if that's what the board would like to do. So please note tonight that if you want them to keep moving forward, the budget already includes that dollar amount.
I'd say move forward with it.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, one thing that I'm a little bit not concerned with, but you're saying the potential is that we're going to decrease traffic down 31 based on some of those numbers. So you're going to divert traffic away from 31?
By choice.
By choice, I know, but I mean, how is that going to impact our businesses down there?
I think that's a good thing.
It's a good thing for traffic.
Well, I think
Good thing for public safety.
Of course. But I'm just wondering how that may affect any businesses down there. And then the only other, I think absolutely it's needed. There's no doubt about that. I'm just wondering the way it's going to go from a road diet back up to a 5-lane, back down to a road diet. I think once people get used to that, is there any concern between, Oak and State that people are going to try to racetrack around, people, right through that little stretch? I don't know how common it is to go from 3 back to 5 down to 3 again.
You driven up to Batavia? Because they have that up there.
Where it goes in and out like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right at Main and Wilson there,
Yeah.
whatever.
Okay. That would be my only concern. Would
People will do what you said, though. They'll
people,
still
yeah,
do
especially once people.
And people
kinda
are
get
already
used to it.
doing that because the lanes are so narrow to get ahead.
No
so
doubt.
they're not next to the next
Yep,
the car
no
right
doubt.
next to it, so it's already happening.
Biggest
Yep.
concern is also the fire department being right there, where you've got the expansion of 3 to 5. Is that going to be detrimental to them being able to get in and get out? Now they've got to go through 5 lanes versus 3 lanes.
Well, it's
It'll
just,
be 5
it's just
lanes
staying the way it is.
It'll
It's
stay
going
the
to stay
same way.
exactly
It's just
the way
staying exactly as it is.
right now. The in front of the fire station where they
Yeah,
come out there.
But how it is now, I think even they have an issue with it. Every time I'm there, everybody's on the striped area that you're not supposed to be on, trying to make a left turn. So
Yeah.
is this going to exacerbate?
Well, that's
that
not
issue?
going to change that,
That's where they want
right?
it.
Well, it'd be better since you have 2 lanes of stacked traffic versus 1. I mean, it'd be
Right.
a big stacking issue.
I did notice the shoulders are a little bit larger, too, on each side on the 3-lane.
You said 2 or 3 feet?
Yeah.
2.5
Yeah.
to 3 feet left
That's
over.
good.
Yeah.
So if you remember, that's an interesting point because one of the issues that we've had with Route 31 and being able to beautify it is the fact that there is virtually no right-of-way. A lot of times you even see a carriage walk where the sidewalk is right up to the curb. And so because you have a limited right-of-way, there's no real hope to expand that roadway wider to make it safer to drive on. So that's the idea, is by doing the less lanes, you have normal size lanes, plus you have a couple foot shoulder in case someone is going over the line. In this case, you have the middle turn lane that actually provides a buffer as well.
I've had 3 mirrors sideswiped, so I was happy to see this. It was somebody coming the other way. I was in the center lane, and it's like you mentioned, you have to move over because you got somebody come up the right side of you and snap my mirror right off. And they just kept going, so it was
Yeah.
good.
And just to reiterate, the reason this is stopping at airport, the study stopped at airport for 2 reasons. One is the traffic volume gets exponentially higher when you're closer to 88. But then once you get south of 88, the lanes are normal size lanes. So, and I swear, I didn't realize that, like, you just drive it so often, you're just used to it until someone mentioned it. And I'm like, oh, that really, you can actually see the difference.
Yeah.
So rather than having 5 lanes, I actually thought about this in Batavia. It's pretty annoying when you're going north on Batavia or in Batavia and you want to turn right at Fabian, why did they not just make that a right turn lane only and keep it 3 lanes, but a turn lane on each side then?
I'm just going to jump in real quick and take a guess that on the other side of Fabian is Geneva, and Geneva did their road diet before Batavia's, so I don't know if it was always like, if, I know what you're saying, because I've been
Right,
in
but
that
if you're going to
intersection.
turn right onto 31, you would have that right lane to turn into and then merge in. You don't really need it going up
You're
to the
saying- I see what you're
intersection.
saying.
It
If
should
you're
just be a
going
turn
north
lane
already,
only.
why would you need to
Yes.
jut out and then come back right back in?
Correct.
Okay.
It should be a right turn only. So I don't know if that's something that we could look at in this area as well, just to not just keep it 5 lanes just because. Is there a way to actually improve the area to make it better?
Between State and Oak, you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, State and Oak was, the amount of traffic was shocking, to be honest with you. We knew
Just
that-
making a longer turn lane potentially to turn left onto Butterfield.
And it just shows you, like, very quick segue of why we're putting improvements into Oak and Randall and putting, banners and flowers and signage out there is people travel Oak Street and you can see it in that movement of, 56 to 31 to Oak.
Yeah.
And that segment is the most busy segment.
Yeah.
So, we all good then, to move
Yeah.
on?
Sure.
All right, well done, Vince. Yep,
Thank you,
thanks.
guys.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our discussion. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. Exec session will start shortly.